My family stole $7,000 from my dead husband's life insurance. But when they excluded my son from Christmas, I exposed them all at dinner, and the entire family abandoned them. I'm 34 years old. I work in marketing, and up until about a year and a half ago, I had a pretty normal life. You know, the typical thing: husband, kid, house in the suburbs, that kind of stuff. But then my husband Ryan died in a construction accident and literally everything went to shit. And when I say everything, I don't just mean my emotional life, but also my relationship with my family, which turned out to be absolute garbage disguised as family support. I guess I should start from the beginning. So, this makes sense. Because the story is so twisted that if I don't tell it in order, you're going to think I'm exaggerating. But I swear I'm not. Ryan and I had been married for like 10 years when the accident happened. He worked in construction, supervised job sites, and that day in October, a year and a half ago, a crane failed, and basically that was it. He was 36 years old. Our son Liam was barely 6, almost 7. And from one day to the next, he went from having a dad who took him to the park and explained how things worked because Liam is super curious about science and all that, to having only memories and a mom who could barely get out of bed. The first few months were horrible. Like, I don't even know how I survived. Honestly. My in-laws, Carol and William, were incredible. They stayed with Liam constantly, brought me food, forced me to leave the house. They lost their son but somehow found the strength to help me and their grandson. And to this day, I don't know how to thank them for that. My family, on the other hand, well, at first they seemed to be there. My mom came to the house, my dad hugged me at the funeral, my older sister Jennifer cried with me, and I thought that at least I had that support. But things started getting weird like 2 weeks after the funeral. The construction company had a life insurance policy for Ryan. Pretty good, actually. $300,000. And when that money came in, it was like an alarm went off that only my family could hear. My mom called me one day and said, "Oh, honey, we need to talk about something important. Come to dinner this Friday, just you. Leave Liam with Carol and William." And I thought they wanted to talk about how I was processing everything or something like that, like an emotional support conversation. You know what I mean? I arrived at my parents' house, and my sister Jennifer was also there with my mom and dad, all sitting in the living room with these serious faces. And my dad poured me a wine, which was already weird because my dad hardly ever drinks. And then the interrogation started. How much had the life insurance been? If I had already received it, what I was going to do with that money? If I had investment plans. And there I was like an idiot answering everything because I thought it was genuine concern. I told them yes, that it had been $300,000. That I was going to put it in a savings account and use part of it for Liam's college and to maintain the house while I processed everything. My mom nodded as if she was analyzing every word and then said, "Well, honey, that's good that you have that backup, because there are families that are left with nothing." And Jennifer added, "Yes, Isa, blessing that Ryan had that insurance." And I was still there thinking it was a normal conversation, until my dad said, "And well, I guess now you'll be able to help the family more when we need it, right?" And that's when I started to feel like something didn't add up. But I still wasn't processing what exactly. Jennifer has 3 kids. They're like 8, 6, and 4 years old. And she doesn't work a normal job. I mean, she sells those multi-level products. You know, the essential oils and miracle creams and all that crap. And her husband Brian works at a bank, but they make good money. It's not like they're broke or anything. But Jennifer has always been the favorite daughter. Like, since we were kids, my parents treated her like she was special and me like I was Plan B. And when she had kids, it got worse because suddenly my parents had 3 perfect grandchildren from their perfect daughter. Liam to them was always like secondary. They came to see him on his birthday and that was it, while they saw Jennifer's kids every weekend. So anyway, after that weird dinner, Jennifer started asking me for money. The first time was like 2 weeks later. She called me crying that she needed help to pay for I don't know what thing for the kids' school, if I could lend her $500. And me and my grief and my stupidity, I transferred her the money. Then it was that she needed it for the dentist. Then for I don't know what car repair. And each time she was more shameless with the excuses. One day she literally told me, "Oh, Isa, thank God Ryan left when he did because that insurance came just when we needed it most." And I just stood there, frozen with the phone in my hand thinking, did she just say my husband's death was convenient? But I didn't say anything because I was so depressed and so lost that I didn't have the energy to confront anyone. Then came the family dinner in March. Like 6 months after Ryan died, My parents organized this big dinner at their house. We were all there, Jennifer and Brian, the kids, Liam and me, and my mom had cooked a ton of things. Everything was going normal until we finished eating, and my mom said, "Well, Jennifer told us that you two have been talking about helping us a little each month with some expenses because we're getting older, and it would be nice to have that support from our daughters." And me there thinking, what the hell is she talking about? Because Jennifer and I had never talked about that. But Jennifer looked at me with those please go along with it eyes and started saying, "Yes, Mommy. Isabella and I were talking and we thought it would be fair for each of us to contribute something monthly. I'm going to send $500, and Isabella said she could send 1,000 because, well, she has more capacity right now. Can you believe it?" She was putting me into a made-up financial commitment in front of the whole family. And my parents there smiling like it was the most natural idea in the world. And my dad saying, "Oh, how sweet our daughters are. Always thinking of us." And me so stupid that I didn't want to make a scene in front of Liam and the other kids, so I just said, yeah, sure. No problem." I felt trapped. Like when you know you're being manipulated, but you don't know how to get out of the situation without seeming like the bad guy. I started sending the $1,000 each month, starting in April. And Jennifer supposedly was also sending her 500. My parents, every time they saw me, told me how grateful they were, what a good daughter I was, but they never asked how Liam was or how I was processing everything. It was just, "Thanks for the money, honey. It really helps us with your dad's medicine and house expenses." And I kept sending it because I thought that at least I was doing something good, helping my elderly parents, fulfilling my family duty or whatever you want to call it. But then in July, like 3 months later, I went to my parents' house one day without warning because I was in the area and wanted to say hi. I knocked on the door and nobody answered, but I heard voices inside. So I used my key, he still had one from when I lived with them, and went in. My dad was in the kitchen talking on the phone, and when he saw me, he went pale. He hung up quickly and said, "Oh, honey, what a scare you gave us. What are you doing here?" And I told him I was just stopping by to say hi. Then my mom came out of her room and she also looked uncomfortable. I asked them if something was wrong and my dad said no, nothing, but there was something weird in the atmosphere. I stayed like half an hour chatting about nothing important, and when I was leaving, my mom walked me to the door and said, "Honey, you know we love you very much, and you appreciate your help." And I told her yes. That's what family is for. But then she said something that seemed super strange to me. She said, "It's a shame that Jennifer can't help as much as you, but well, she does what she can." And I was thinking about that the whole way home, because what did it mean that she couldn't help as much? She was supposedly sending 500 a month too. I don't know what got into me, but that night I texted Jennifer asking, "Hey Jen, how's it going with sending money to mom and dad?" And she responded super casual, "Oh yeah, all good. They're happy with the help." And I said, "Yeah, but you're sending the 500 each month, right?" And she left me on read. Literally didn't answer me. And that's when I started to suspect that something very ugly was happening. The next morning, I called my mom and asked her directly, "Mom, how much money does Jennifer send you each month?" And there was an uncomfortable silence, and then she said, "Oh, honey, it's not your problem. Everyone helps as they can." And I insisted, "No, Mom, tell me how much she sends you. I need to know." And finally, she told me, "Well, the truth is, Jennifer hasn't been able to send us anything yet because she has a lot of expenses with the kids, but she says she'll be able to start soon." So for 3 months, I had been sending $1,000, thinking Jennifer was sending 500, when in reality, she hadn't sent a single cent. They had scammed me. My own sister and my own parents had put me in an emotional scam to get money out of me. I got furious, like angrier than I had been in months, because it's one thing for them to ask me for help directly, and another very different thing for them to manipulate me and lie to me. I called Jennifer and I yelled at her. Literally yelled at her on the phone. How dare she put me in that commitment, telling our parents that I was going to send $1,000 when she supposedly was going to send 500 but never had any intention of doing it. And she told me with that victim voice she has, "Oh, Isabella, it's just that you have that money from the life insurance and I have 3 kids and a lot of expenses. I thought you wouldn't mind helping a little more." A little more? She had made me look like we were contributing together, when in reality I was the only one paying. I hung up the call and called my parents and told them I wasn't going to send any more money, that they had lied to me and manipulated me. My dad told me I was exaggerating, that at the end of the day, they needed the help and I had the resources. And my mom added, how could I deny help to my own parents after everything they had done for me? And me there thinking everything they've done for me? Like what? Prefer Jennifer my whole life? Treat Liam like a second-class grandson? Manipulate me to get money out of me when I'm grieving? But I didn't say any of that. I just told them I needed time to think and hung up. I went like 2 months without talking to them. August and September passed and I focused on Liam, on my work, on going to therapy. Yes, I had started therapy because obviously I needed it. And honestly, I felt better without the constant drama of my family. My in-laws continued to be incredible. Carol took Liam to science classes on Saturdays and William helped him with his school projects. And I thought that maybe my real family was them, not the people who shared my blood. Then November came and my mom called me. Like a month and a half had passed without talking to her or Jennifer or my dad. And when I saw her name on the screen, I hesitated to answer, but finally I did. She told me she wanted us to come to Christmas dinner. That it was important for the family to be together during the holidays, that enough months of tension had passed, and it was time to leave everything behind. And me, being the idiot that I am, thought maybe she was right. That maybe we could get over all this for the good of the family. I told her I'd think about it, and she said, "Perfect, honey, I'll call you next week with the details." The following week, she called me again. It was like a week before Christmas, and she said, "Honey, you confirmed you're coming, right?" And I said yes, that Liam and I were going to go. And then she said something that left me frozen. She said, "Oh, honey, that's great. But you know what? This year we're going to do dinner differently. It's going to be adults only. So better leave Liam with Carol and William. That way the adults can enjoy peacefully." And I was silent processing what I had just heard. And I said, "Wait, are you telling me I can't bring Liam to the family Christmas dinner?" And she said, "It's just you know how kids get. So much noise, so much mess. This year we want something quieter." I told her that didn't make sense, that Christmas was for families and kids, and she just repeated, "Well, that's the situation, honey. If you want to come, you're welcome, but adults only." I hung up the phone, feeling disgusted, but also curious because something didn't add up. Were they really going to have a Christmas dinner without kids? That made no sense. I mentioned it to Carol that afternoon when I went to pick up Liam, and she said, "Oh, Isabella, that's very strange. Your family has always done big dinners with all the kids." And I knew she was right, but I didn't understand what was happening. And the night of December 24th, I left Liam with Carol and William. He was so excited because William had bought him a chemistry experiment kit for kids, and Carol was going to make cookies with him, and I felt guilty leaving him there while I went to this stupid dinner. But at the same time, I thought maybe it was an opportunity to fix things with my family. How naive. Seriously. I arrived at my parents' house around 7 at night. I knocked on the door and my dad opened it with a glass of wine in his hand, smiling, and said, "Oh, honey, good that you arrived. Come in, come in." I went in, and the first thing I heard was the noise of kids screaming and laughing. I froze in the entrance. There were kids. All 3 of Jennifer's kids were there, running through the living room with 2 other kids I recognized as my cousin, Laura's children. The living room was decorated with those cheesy Christmas decorations. There was a giant tree full of presents, and all my extended family was there. My aunts and uncles, my cousins, all with their kids. All the family's kids were there, all of them, except Liam. I stood there in the entrance with my coat still on, and felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. My mom came over and said, "Oh, honey, you arrived. Come say hi to everyone." And I just looked at her and said, "You told me it was adults only." And she got nervous and said, "Oh, yeah, well, in the end, we decided it was better to bring the kids. You know how traditions are." And I said, "So, why did you specifically tell me to leave Liam at home?" And she didn't know what to say. She just stood there with her mouth open. Jennifer appeared with a glass of wine and said to me, with that fake smile she has, "Oh, Issa, so glad you came. How's Liam?" And something in me broke. I said out loud, so everyone could hear, "Liam is at his paternal grandparents' house because Mom told me this dinner was adults only. But I see all the other kids are here. So someone needs to explain to me what the hell is going on." The noise in the room stopped. Everyone looked at me. My Uncle Robert said, "Wait, Isabella, they told you not to bring Liam?" And I said, "Yes. They called me last week and specifically told me it was adults only and to leave him with my in-laws. My cousin Laura, who's super direct and never shuts up about anything, said to my mom, "Is that true, Aunt? Did you tell her not to bring her son?" And my mom got all nervous and said, "It's just that it's a complicated situation. You guys don't understand." And there I exploded. I told them in front of the whole family that they had been manipulating me for months, that Jennifer had put me into a fake financial commitment to get money out of me, that they had been squeezing Ryan's life insurance out of me, that they had always treated Liam like a second-class grandson while spoiling Jennifer's kids, and that now they had specifically excluded me from bringing my son to the family Christmas dinner while all the other kids were invited. I told them that Liam had lost his dad barely a year and a half ago and that they, his own family, were excluding him on his first Christmas without his father. My dad tried to calm me down and said, "Isabella, that's enough. You're making a scene." And I yelled at him, "A scene? You told my son he wasn't welcome at the family Christmas. What kind of grandparents do that?" Jennifer tried to intervene and said, "Oh, Isabella, always exaggerating everything. Nobody said Liam wasn't welcome." And I said, "Then why did Mom specifically call me to tell me to leave him at home? Why are all the other kids here?" And then Jennifer, in her nervousness and her stupidity, said something that changed everything. She said, "It's just that it's not the same, Isa. My kids have a complete family and Liam, well, and we needed that money, that you—" And she stopped short because she realized what she had said, but it was already too late. Brian, her husband, who was standing next to her, said, "What money?" And Jennifer went white. I took advantage of the moment and told Brian, "Your wife convinced me to send $1,000 monthly to my parents, telling them she was going to send $500, but she never sent a single cent. It was all a trap to get money from Ryan's life insurance out of me." Brian looked at me and then looked at Jennifer and said, "Is that true?" And Jennifer started stammering excuses, but he interrupted her and said, "Jennifer, answer. Did you get money out of your widowed sister?" And she started crying and saying they needed the money, that I had more than enough, that it wasn't fair that I had all that money, while they had to struggle. My Aunt Patricia, who's my mom's sister, said to my parents, "Did you guys know about this? Were you okay with this?" And my dad tried to defend himself, saying they needed the help, that they were elderly, and my aunt said, "You're 70 years old and healthy. You both have your pension. You don't need your widowed daughter to support you." And my mom said, "It's just that Jennifer also needed help and we thought that Isabella could." And my aunt interrupted her and said, "You thought Isabella could what? Support all of you? While you exclude her grandson from family gatherings?" Several of my cousins started asking questions and saying that this wasn't right. My cousin Daniel, who I had always liked, said to me, "Isabella, is that why you haven't come to family gatherings these months?" And I told him yes, that I had discovered the money manipulation in July and that's why I had distanced myself. He turned to my parents and said, "This is unforgivable. She lost her husband. She's raising a 7-year-old boy alone, and you're milking her for money." Jennifer kept crying and Brian grabbed her by the arm and said, "We're leaving. We're going to have a very serious conversation at home." He started calling his kids and looking for their coats. My aunts and uncles and cousins also started gathering their things, saying they weren't going to stay at a party where they had excluded a 7-year-old boy who had just lost his dad. My cousin Laura hugged me before leaving and said, "Forgive me for not realizing before. We should have been there for you." In less than half an hour, the house had emptied. Only my parents, me, and the mess of food and decorations remained. My mom tried to approach me and tell me she was sorry, that things had gotten out of control, but I raised my hand and said, "I don't want to hear it. You told me to leave my son at home on Christmas. If you stole from me, you favored Jennifer my whole life, and now that I finally confront you, you're sorry? No, you're sorry you got caught." And I left. I drove straight to Carol and William's house. When I arrived, it was like 9 at night and I found Liam in the kitchen with William doing experiments with baking soda and vinegar. He was happy, laughing, his face covered in flour because they had also been making cookies. He saw me and yelled, "Mommy, look, we made a volcano," and ran to hug me. Carol looked at me and knew immediately that something had happened. I told her, "I'll tell you later." And we stayed there watching Liam explain to William all the chemical reactions he had learned. The following days were interesting. Brian called Carol, turns out he and William knew each other from, I don't know where, and told her he had confronted Jennifer about the money and that they were in couples therapy because he had no idea his wife had been manipulating his widowed sister-in-law. Several of my cousins wrote to me apologizing for not realizing before what was happening and telling me that Liam would always be welcome in their homes. My Aunt Patricia invited me to spend New Year's with her family, and it was beautiful. Everyone treated Liam like the special kid he is. I blocked my parents and Jennifer from my phone. I didn't want to hear more fake apologies or manipulation attempts. I felt light, honestly, like I had taken a giant weight off my shoulders. I redirected the money I had been sending them to a college account for Liam and hired a financial advisor to make sure that insurance money lasted and grew for my son's future. Like 2 months ago, my mom showed up at my house without warning. I didn't let her in. We talked at the door and she told me she wanted to fix things. That family was important. I told her she was right. That family was important, and that's why I was going to protect my son from toxic and manipulative people, even if they shared my blood. She started crying and saying, how could I do that to them? And I told her they had done it, to me first. That they had had months to treat us well and chose to do the opposite. I closed the door. Now Liam is 8 years old. He's in 2nd grade and he's the happiest and most curious kid I know. Carol and William see him every weekend. They take him to science museums, buy him books about space and planets. My cousins who took my side invite us to gatherings, and Liam has a nice relationship with those kids. Brian wrote to me a month ago, apologizing for not having known what Jennifer was doing and offered to pay me back the money I had sent to my parents. But I told him it wasn't necessary, that it wasn't his fault. Last week, Liam asked me why we don't see Grandma and Grandpa anymore. My parents. I told him the truth, in an age-appropriate way. I told him that sometimes people do things that hurt us and that it's okay to distance ourselves from them even if they're family. He asked me if I was sad about it. And I told him that at first, yes, but that now I was fine. Because I have so many people who really love us. He thought about it for a moment and then said, I think Grandma Carol and Grandpa William are better family anyway. And honestly, I couldn't agree with him more.